welcome to Choosing Acceptance podcast with your host, Marie Mason. I am here to share some success stories and tips on how to overcome your learning disability so that you can turn your talents into a career. And I love to inspire children and parents and teachers with learning disabilities to go beyond their limits so that they can make a bigger impact in the world. Schedule a call to become a guest on our show at calendly.com/Marie V. Mason. So, welcome to the Choosing Acceptance podcast. I am your host, Marie Mason, and I'm super excited today because we have a great show lined up for you and you don't want to miss it. We will be sharing some great tips on how to overcome your learning disabilities and turn your talents into a career. Stick around for some advice from people who are struggling with learning disabilities or how they overcame it. And at the end of each episode, we are going to share how to access resources to help you understand your learning disabilities and how you can overcome it too. I am really excited because you don't have to hear from me all the time on this show. And today's guest is going to be amazing. His name is John Paduchak. Did I spell that? Pronounce it correct?
Paduchak.
Almost. Getting closer. So, and he is going to be sharing some great tips on a learning disability that he's familiar with. And I am also going to share our top tips of the week. So before we get started, let me share the top tips of the week. We are going to a quick commercial break, and then I will bring up our guest, John. So really quick, last week's we talked about the myths and facts about auditory perception and what it is and what it isn't, and did a little deep dive discussion on that topic. So that's another learning disability that's common, that also gets misdiagnosed a lot of times because it can one learning disability can also have other learning disabilities, that go with it, coupled with it. So it kind of gets a little misinterpreted and sometimes also misdiagnosed. So that's why I wanted to make sure people were aware of that one. So we're going to be talking about the gift of autism. And I want to first define what autism is, and then I'm going to ask John some questions because he has a son with autism, so he has firsthand experience with working with autism children. So I wanted to make sure we bring up some highlights on that as well. So the first thing is, what is autism spectrum disorder? And basically that is a complex neurological and developmental disorder that affects an individual's ability to communicate, interact with others, and behave appropriately in social situations. And it's also known as ASD. So we're going to see that is for an abbreviated version of it. And that is also an umbrella term for a wide range of disorders that are characterized by varying degrees of difficulty in communication, social interaction, and behavior. And while there's no one-size-fits-all description for it, it is typically characterized by difficulties in the verbal and the nonverbal communications for social interactions and the tendency to exhibit repetitive and restrictive behaviors. The term spectrum refers to the range of symptoms, skills, and levels of impairment that can occur in people with ASD. And since there's no two individuals with the condition that have the exact same symptoms or experiences, sometimes that's also hard to diagnose. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I totally do.
Cool. So in order to understand the complexities of ASD, it's really important to understand the different symptoms and characteristics associated with it. We're not going to go into all that detail today. We might do that on another show. But one of the things I do want to do is have John bring his perspective as a parent and how he's helped his son overcome a lot of his learning disabilities. And what our focus is highlighting on what children can do and not what they can't do. And that's really the focus of each show. So before we bring up our speaker today, we are going to hear a word from one of our sponsors, and we're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll see you at the end of the next section of our show. So we are going to take a quick pause for that break. Meet Marie Mason from Charlottesville, Virginia. She is a podcast consultant for Liberty Virtual Solutions. She empowers transformation coaches who want to boost their business with podcasts by brainstorming the content and structure of their podcast. Our proven podcast roadmap will help you to develop a strategy for launching your podcast so that you can grow your business. Rebring your podcast to life at libertyvirtualsolutions.com. And welcome back to the Choosing Acceptance podcast with your host, Marie Mason, and our guest, John Paduchak, and I'm going to pronounce it again sooner or later.
You did better that time.
I've only known you for 4 years, and I still need to learn how to pronounce it. But anyway, he is an RV enthusiast and business marketing strategist with his company called Crucial Business Strategies, where he helps businesses get away from tactics that don't serve them and move towards running a strategy-oriented business based on systems and processes that work. That's super cool. I like that. May even have you even share a little bit about that. So I'm super grateful to have you on the show today. And I love our topic that we created, which is the gift of autism, because I really believe that learning disabilities are not a detriment. They're a gift.
I do too.
So awesome. And we're going to go into our topic. Basically, we're going to do like a quick deep dive. So I really want to focus on our goal, which is on each show, which is to help people with learning disabilities make a difference in this world. That's like my whole focus for the show. So we want their voices to be heard, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they can contribute in so many cool ways. And I want to help people understand they're not stupid. They're not lazy. They just have a different way of learning. And sometimes they have a different approaches. And we have to help them figure that out, right, as parents?
Absolutely. And sometimes we have to also, give people different strategies because a lot of the thinking that you have to use is out of the box.
Exactly.
It just depends on your child.
Exactly. And it's all about thinking out of the box. I love the way you put that. So let's start off with, have you ever had to deal, and I know I kind of hinted at this already, but have you ever dealt with a child with autism?
Of course. My own. So my own son.
Yes.
So my own son, he has autism. He's 23 now. And we noticed some very odd things. We didn't really get a diagnosis till recently, believe it or not, because which is very unusual. But we had so much difficulty with the school and getting through that process that he was in middle school at the time. And I think if we had pursued it in elementary school, both the staff and the teachers in our particular town were much better at helping out with that. And also, I think the school is probably a little bit easier for them to jump in and take care of that. Middle school, you're starting to get ready for high school. The poor guy, his first week of school, he gets a fracture of his ankle in gym class. And that's what kind of brought up a whole, without better explanation, firestorm of a mess that we had that really changed our whole future of how we dealt with his situation.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you found it and diagnosed it, because like you said, some people go all their lives and not even realize that. I've had people tell me that they spent most of their childhood and And it wasn't until they were adults when they found out they had a learning disability. And it, of course, explained what they struggled with all their life.
I'm
So
one
they
of those
didn't have,
people.
yeah.
Believe it or
Oh,
not.
cool.
So not only through helping my son and daughter with their situations, I learned that, I too struggle from some of the same things that they do.
Wow.
And so I would have never realized that until, because when we were young, Marie, they didn't have a name for any of this stuff.
Right.
I know that I went to Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester, New York for, gosh, I want to say like 5, 6, 7 years because I was diagnosed myself with tremors at age 2,
Wow.
which is very unusual for a child to be diagnosed with essential tremors at that kind of an age. Usually that's reserved for, other,
Adults.
yeah, exactly. Usually adults in their earliest in their late teens, and on, and further down the road. And so I could go on and on about that, but we really want to talk more about autism. So
We'll definitely have you on the
tie
show
back
and we
into
can
that.
talk about that and highlight
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
That's good to know because, like I said, it's good that you brought that up because like I said earlier at the beginning of the show, each person that has a learning disability might
yeah.
have more than one challenge that they're dealing with.
Mine has many.
Yes, exactly. And so, and
Yeah.
you brought up a good point. So it's good to address all of them, though we're going to focus on autism. It's good to highlight some of the others. So that's fine.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, until my wife got very interested in doing DNA until we looked through and did our family's DNA, and I made sure my father's last gift to me was a DNA sample, so that I could run his and see where different things that affected me may have come from. And I'll talk a little further about it, but I was alluding to you before that my father had a rare clockwork gene, which plays a huge, huge role with Nick and with him going to traditional school, which means he's up for, like 2 weeks at a time during the day, and he'll shift to 2 weeks at a time or so during the night. And I use 2 weeks as kind of an example. It's not always 2 weeks. It could be a week, could be a few days.
It varies.
It varies all over the place, but it's a rare gene that my father had. And we wouldn't have known about it unless we had gone through and done our DNA and then plugged in the medical portion. So anyways.
That's amazing. I've never heard of it, but it makes sense.
We'll talk more about it as we go along.
And like I said, these might become good topics for future shows. So yeah, you never know because we're gonna go on. But and I think it's really important that you made a point here about the DNA testing because I did not know that we can actually do DNA testing for certain learning disabilities or certain challenges like tremors or clockwork genes. I didn't even know that we had those capabilities because back when I was growing up, there were some things that you just didn't get tested for. You just, it was just more observed by the teachers and behaviors.
Most of the stuff we'll talk about today, we didn't have when we were kids, you and I.
Right.
So,
which is amazing. So we made a lot of progress, which is good. We still need work, but we're making progress.
I think the only challenge now is that now we have a label for things, and so it was nice. We were kids. We didn't have a label that we were on the autism spectrum or that we had ADHD or any of these things. And most of us weren't medicated for it. Our teachers let us go outside and play, like most of our kids don't get a chance to do today, or at least to the extent that they need to.
Well, they like to hide behind computers now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that too.
Yeah. Playing games is what I'm thinking of. But I get that.
That's good in its own way too. I could go on and on for hours about the relationships my son has made with, friends playing games. Even my neighbors met, playing World of Warcraft together and got married.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so,
that's hopeful.
It's amazing the way things have changed,
And I was going to ask you how autism affects learning, and I want to give some fact behind that before, and then I want you to bring your experience with that, and then we're going to talk about autistic brains, how the autistic brain learns differently, which I want you to share with from your just experiences,
Hmm.
not the clinical part. And then what accommodations, interventions have helped you the most with your son.
Okay.
A brief description on the weakness, if we have time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then also what your son's gifts and talents and how it's helped you with your business. So I want to be able to get into that framework real quick. So let me start off with how autism affects learning. And really quick, autism has a complex neurological disorder, like I said before, that
Mhm.
affects individuals in a variety of ways that we alluded to already. And
Right.
that is including their ability to learn. It is estimated that over 1 out of 59 children in the U.S. suffer from autism spectrum disorder. I don't know if you knew that. Cool fact.
Hmm.
And a wide range of conditions that can cause difficulties in communication, social interaction, and behavior. I believe it's good to understand that part so that it helps explain the rest of it. And then the severity of these symptoms, like we had alluded to earlier, can vary greatly from person to person. So it's important to understand how autism affects learning in each individual. But like we said, it's not a cookie cutter thing. It's harder to
No.
discuss, decipher. So the next we're going to discuss how autism can affect learning and also discuss the common causes of autism
Hmm.
and how to provide some strategies. Maybe we can, if you have any strategies that helps your son, for
Sure.
example, and then also helping children with autism and how to learn, because it's so important for teachers and parents and caregivers to get a better equipped at helping students with autism to succeed in school. Because if in not just in school, but in life. And so moving forward, my next question to you is how has your experience been with um, how does autism affect your child's learning disability?
Yeah.
Learning, I should say. So how does
Learning.
autism affect your child's learning?
Well, I'd say the first thing is it made it so that he couldn't really attend a regular public school. It was impossible for him to do that, mostly because of the sleep disorder side of what he has, rather than the autism side. Although the autism side makes things difficult too, because in his case, with autism, oftentimes he may not answer a question correctly. And in school, we're all judged on our answers. At the end of the day, it's not most classes in middle school, high school are not pass fail. They're graded. And so you either have the right answer or you have the wrong answer. And so many times he would come back to me. And by the way, because of the rare clockwork gene and his issues with teachers, I ended up homeschooling him. And so we took a completely different approach to his work at home, where it was pass fail. We talked about different topics, and it was great. I often refer people to, it was a lot like the time with Jay Leno. You know, when Jay Leno used to go on TV and he would interview somebody from Harvard and they didn't know who the president of the United States was, or who the senator of their state was, or anything like who's their governor. I think all of these things, that Jay used to go through with people, and my son can answer all those questions. So, in a way, did he get the same kind of education as somebody in school would get? In some ways better. In some ways, we had to work around his disability to, like, for instance, math. He had a hugely difficult time with math. And there was a time where he really wanted to be a computer coder, and that was super, super difficult. Could I have probably got him a tutor, or I'm not sure that would have even worked, to be honest. It just because, again, he had those times where he couldn't distinguish whether this answer was right or the answer was right or what the right answer was. So that's just a couple of the things that we ran into.
That's good to know because
Mm.
I also know several other adults who've had this as well growing
Mm.
up. So this might be good for them to understand that.
Yeah. But everybody's different. Everybody has different issues,
Right.
different things going on. Most of them wouldn't have his memory issue or there's some. I still think of him as being very high functioning, although he's probably going to end up on disability shortly, just because he has so many things going on. And that's a little hard to handle, because I look at him and I look at some of the I look at all the ways he's brilliant, not the ways everybody else does.
Right. Exactly. And that's good that you do that, because some people in the past, like when we were growing up, sometimes because children were seen and not heard, it was a whole different kind of approach to
Completely
child
different.
rearing when we were growing up. And I've noticed that it's changed a lot, which is good. But back then, it was much more of a different approach. I was lucky because my mom and dad recognized my skills and my abilities and talents and focused more on that, and then provided the support that I needed to overcome the classroom aspect of it.
Yep.
And gave me the support I needed, however I needed it. I was lucky too in that respect. And I'm glad that you're doing that for your son, because I'm telling you, it's still something that is still being figured out, because not everybody gets that talent.
No.
So that's good to know. So next question is,
Yep.
and I don't know if we're going to have much time to go into it because we've got 7 more minutes left.
It's okay. I'll answer fast.
Good deal. I love it. So how does the autistic brain learn differently? Because I know you alluded to that, your son, how he answers the questions differently, and
it's strange because he's also dyslexic, and I know what that's like. So he's had to do a lot of stuff where he has had to pick up things on his own, take his time learning things, take his time reading things, because everything looks jumbled up and it's kind of a mess. And I do think too, that's probably a lot of the reason that he answers things incorrectly, because he's probably read it incorrectly. So I mean, that dyslexia is yet another part of kind of the ADHD side of what he has. He also has kind of moderate depression because of all of this. And I think we all have depression just because of, if we're going through something really, really heavy, and children with autism, it's kind of like their whole life is kind of heavy. Some of them, mine especially. They want to learn, they want to be, really, really good at something. And sometimes that changes. My son's really kind of a technical whiz, and that's one of the biggest places he helps me out with things. But
that's awesome.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it sounds to me like he needs to learn, and people with learning disabilities probably need better coping skills to help them overcome some of that depression. And so that, because it's I think if we know if we can solve the problems, figure out what's the problems are, and then we have better ways of coping it, that makes things so much easier, So that's just my 2 cents. But that's a great observation. I just want to bring up from what you had said. But the next one is, you mentioned his weaknesses and everything, but now we're going to really focus on your son's talents and how that's helped you, because you had already talked about how you did the interventions and comfort and how you accommodate your son, which is really having him work from home, which is really great that you did that and were able to do that.
Right.
So you said his talents. What specifically is his talents, and how is that helping you with your new business model? So, or any of your business models?
He's very technical. So, I mean, the good news is we all use computers, and so whenever I have any kind of computer problem or some kind of technical challenge, he's usually really good at solving it, even faster than me. And I said I'm a little apprehensive about that, because I've got an engineering degree and everything else too. And so a lot of times when my son solves something faster than me, or kind of almost solves it so fast it makes me look stupid, that's a little rough.
Takes a
But
hit on your self-image.
maybe a little, maybe just a
Okay.
little bit. But
Okay.
he's done well, picking up stuff on his own. And one of the things that I've been encouraging to, I'll just kind of leave it at this, is there's so many training classes. Amazon makes their training available on cloud computing. A lot of these kids are prime candidates to do this stuff. Google makes all their training available to the public. Tammy, who that does cybersecurity, our friend, she gave me a list of people who are companies that do all their cybersecurity stuff as free to the public. So there's a lot of education that's available for our kids if we look for it.
Okay. That is really cool, because that's one of the things that I wanted to highlight. You just gave me some great resources.
You're
So maybe
welcome.
we should put what are some resources, which is something I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
And I think the tip is here is really find out what your child's talents are.
Yeah, and
then
try to take advantage of that. And the other
Right.
thing that I mentioned to you before we started, I think it was about a month ago, Governor Baker in Massachusetts signed a law saying that I don't care whether your child finished school, whether they're autistic. I want them to have access to college or higher education of some type. And so that was a big boon for us to be able to, at least explore other opportunities. Like maybe Nick would be great at some certificate program that could get him a leg up someplace. So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of realization of, the plight that we face with, trying to get our kids the right education.
Right. And it's so important. Education is like super important, because you can take those talents and skills and turn them into careers,
And money.
and learn and learn, and not only learn, you learn. I always tell my students for my business academy you need to be able to pour into your own self in order to give out to others. So if you're not learning something new, how can you share that with others? So
Right.
learning is really, it's not just for your skill sets. It's also, it helps you grow as a person too, and helps
Yeah.
you when you're learning. It's you need to be challenged, and you need to have something new.
Right.
And I just want to sit there and say, I know that I mentioned something earlier, and hopefully I can remember what I said specifically, because we got to wrap up pretty quickly. But the key thing I wanted to mention was that I don't want to sit there and sound like I cut you down earlier, because I'm not like that, as you know. But for the audience listening, I never want to sit there and have them appear that I'm cutting anyone down. We all have our talents and our differences and our disabilities. And I wanted to highlight them, not to cut people down, but to point out that they're there for a reason. There are our gifts.
Yes.
And even though we have had a situation, we can learn from them. And the good thing about it is, when you have a learning disability and you struggle with something a little more, I find that you benefit more because you have to struggle.
You do. And a couple things I was just going to say, my son helped me build all of our computers for our business. We built them all by hand. They're all custom computer systems. One thing he'll say he struggles with is, he says, I don't like conversing with people, but yet he'll be the first person to go up and hold a door for somebody, say something to somebody. Sometimes he says stuff, obviously very unfiltered, and I have to, say, every once in a while we got to find a little filter for a few things here and there. But for the most part, he's a great, very empathetic kid, who loves to do whatever he can to help other people.
That is super cool. I actually just was quickly messaging somebody to make sure that the next call was not um, wondering where I was. So no problem. That's super cool. So tell me a brief description about what it is that your business is, because you have a business advisory service and RV Goodness podcast that you're
Yep.
getting ready to launch, I think. Is that
Exactly.
correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Give
So
me a just short description.
RV Goodness will be at rvgoodness.com. That's always been a passion project for me. My wife and I like to travel. We'd like to do it full time at some point. We travel predominantly in an RV, but we've got some plans to travel internationally, and we're developing some products around that for people so they can do more video, so they can make more income while they're on the road. We call it gassive income because that's usually what our biggest expense is when we're traveling with the RV. At 5 miles to the gallon is gas.
Yes, that's in the U.S. We don't even know what the rest of the countries are dealing with right now. So,
and so my regular business fits in well with that, because one of the things we shifted to is more of a marketing strategies approach with our advisory service for businesses. And by that, I mean that many businesses are kind of overcome by tactics. We're constantly getting barraged by the people who say, "Oh, let me get more clients for you on LinkedIn. Let me do Facebook ads or YouTube ads for you," or whatever. And the biggest problem we find is that people have no overarching strategy for their business. They don't need another tactic. In fact, it's just costing them. They're losing money by people approaching them and saying, "Oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to." And what they really need is an overall encompassing strategy for their business. And in fact, if they had done that in the first place, most businesses, I don't think, would fail. They usually say that most businesses fail within the first 5 to 7 years. And if you really do your research on what you want to do as a business structure and as a business and niche, there's really not a way that you should be failing like that, or at least, or at that rate. I mean, we all have our things where failure is a start to learning. Sometimes we learn by our failures. So
failures is not fatal. It's just a learning process. It's just a
process
of learning. And
exactly.
It's not a negative. It's actually really how people have grown and changed in their course of their business. And also, how do you think people who made inventions, they had to fail more than they failed more than they succeeded, and the success was the result of all those failures. So there's a good point of perspective. Success is a result of all those failures. How's that for a great ending for that?
It's a good one.
So awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
I wanted to actually put a plug in for those who are learning to have a perspective on learning disabilities. I have a book out. I don't know if John's aware of this or not, but it's all about seeing it through a dyslexic child's eyes. And I'm actually creating a book series for all the different learning disabilities I saw in my classroom, autism being one of them. And that's why I wanted you on the show. So, and definitely go check out the book. I'm the author. It's Marie Mason. It's called Bubble Bear's Special Problem. And this book destigmatizes learning disabilities in order to provide a better understanding of their learning process. And it really helps children overcome their fear of learning disabilities so that they can contribute their talents into a career by just bringing simple awareness of how children should be treated in and out of the classroom. And that book is on Amazon and is in paperback. I will have it in other formats in the new year. And I'm actually working on book number 2, which is on auditory perception. Book number 3 will probably be on autism. So that'll be cool. Nice. I'll have to have you pick your brain for that later on. But thank you, John, for being on our show. I hope that you had enjoyed it as much as I have. Mm-hmm. You shared some really good tips on how our audience could grow themselves in their business, and also getting a better understanding of what the gift of autism, because I really feel like each of our learning disabilities is a gift. So we appreciate it. And I want to encourage you to go to our YouTube channel it's called Choosing Acceptance Podcast. We have a special one, and take advantage of John's gift. Go to his website. And John, would you share your website again for me?
Sure. RVGoodness.com is going to be available very shortly, because we're just getting our podcast up right now. So that's probably one of the best places to get in touch with me. And then the second best place would be LinkedIn. And just look for me, John, John, last name Paduchak, Paduchak, and you can connect with me there. Then find out more about what I do, at least on the other side of things.
Excellent. And we will be posting all those links also when we share the videos when it renders. And it's hopefully it'll be in December. We'll let you know. It'll either be this week or next week's show. So you'll be able to see that. And I'll have all the links on there for you as well. And John will let me know when the website is live. So
I will.
Perfect. I look forward to it. So join us next week again for our next episode for great tips on how to overcome your learning disabilities and to achieve success. We stream on our YouTube channel every week. We are going to be varying the times on when we stream it because of the holiday seasons makes it a little bit crazy, as everyone understands. Yeah, you think? Anyway, yes. But make sure you like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you don't miss another episode. And you can find us on the Choosing Acceptance Podcast channel and also on our Facebook, Choosing Acceptance Podcast on Facebook. Until next time, I'm your host, Marie Mason, with our guest, John, and we're going to say goodbye for now for the Choosing Acceptance Podcast, and have a great week, everyone. This ends this week's
Bye for now.
Yep, exactly. My name is Marie Mason. I am the author of Bubble Bear Special Problem. And this book destigmatizes learning disabilities in order to provide a better understanding of their learning disability process. It helps children to overcome their fear of learning disabilities so that they can contribute their talents by bringing awareness to how children should be treated in and out of the classroom. If you would like more to learn about this book, then go to Amazon.com and check out Bubble Bear Special Problem by Marie Mason.